Have you tried manual calendars and digital calendars and somehow still end up missing important appointments? You don't need more tools or more third-party apps, I promise you. In order to connect everything and not miss any more appointments, you just need this 4-part system. I'm Claire. I'm a single mom that works full-time and decided to make this switch to living more intentionally and living specifically by design so that I could be more intentional at work, more intentional at home with my beans, and find more fulfillment in my everyday life. Tell me if this sounds like you. You think if I find the perfect tool, I will finally just get more organized. Or how about you have a Notion account filled with templates and free management tools from creators all over the internet that you've uploaded, started, and then never used again. Or maybe you've tried Trello and Todoist. Maybe you even had a subscription to Monday.com that you used from your work. Made the transition from reminders to Google Tasks, all to eventually add all of the things that you want to get done into the system and finally just ignore it. Or maybe you didn't ignore it, you just absolutely, out of sight, out of mind, forgot completely that there were even projects that were in those systems. And finally, you've probably started so many more systems than you've actually maintained. The list of things that you've started and the list of things that you've maintained are vastly different. I used to be that way too until I found this 4-part system that I adapted from Danny of Time is Honey. I'm going to link her information and access to her course if you want to learn from the master herself down in the notes. But using Danny's system, I was able to put my own spin on it, use the tools that I love the most, and it gave me permission to stop looking for new tools, new third-party apps to try to connect everything and get everything down to 3 simple tools. And I'm going to show you what I use, but I'm more importantly going to show you that you can use the tools that you already know and love for free to incorporate this system and make sure that you never miss an appointment again. And it's my hope that at the end of this video, you'll not only be able to use the tools that you love, but you'll get back on track and stay on track this time. But before we get there, I want to make sure that you know these 2 things. I know that we love learning about other people's tools and systems and what they use, so I'm going to share that 2 of the 3 digital parts I do in Cortex. I will explain and talk about Cortex primarily, but you don't have to use Cortex. If you do choose to use Cortex, it is free, and I will link it down in the show notes. The manual part of the system, I have been an avid bullet journaler for over a decade, and that's what I'm going to show you for that part. But if you're not into writing out your actual pages every single day by hand, I get it, not everybody's into it. So I will also link down in the show notes the calendar or the planner that I recommend that'll help you stay on track. Now, as I mentioned before, this is a 4-part system. I already got started over here, but we are going to go through all 4 parts. And of the 4 parts, the first 3 I'm going to mention are all digital. As I mentioned, I have been bullet journaling forever, and I am a huge advocate for finding pens that you love and writing it down in a system. But in this day and age, you have to have access to a digital calendar because you have work, you have family members that want to share calendars with you. People love to send calendar invites. It's the new way to really connect and make plans. So I had to leave my bullet journaling for later on, and we'll talk about how I use that later, in order to do the first part of the system, which is to adopt a scheduling management tool. Now, the scheduling management tool I use is both Google Calendar and Outlook Calendar. I use Google Calendar as my personal calendar. My family and I all share that different Google Calendars. It's what I already knew. And then when I started working, they love Microsoft Outlook, so they use those. I figured out a way to share my personal calendar onto my Outlook calendar, but then I also added in this system and this whole number 4 over here in order to actually make that obsolete and not necessary, but we'll get there soon. Whichever digital calendar that you decide to use, make sure that you use it to track only time-sensitive, time-specific items, things that have a time that you have to be able to track and make sure that you don't miss. That's that missing the appointment piece. And if you're thinking that's failed you before, I know, I was that way too. That's why you have to stick around to the end so you can see how we use the bullet journal and step 4 in order to make sure that you never miss an appointment again. Now, for the next 2 digital parts, for part 2 and for part 3, I use the system Cortex. For part 2, this is your project management. And a lot of people use things like Monday.com, Trello, Google Tasks, Microsoft To Do. These are all project management tools. And the purpose of a project management tool is to provide space for you to dump everything that has a loose timeline or not anything specific. It's more flexible. This allows you to collect all of the picture projects that have more than one step into one place. Now, the reason that I transitioned over to Cortex is because I wanted everything in one spot. Before, I was using two different apps, and now I could dump everything into Cortex, and then they can connect and talk to each other. So everything from my project management can also be connected to my part 3 step. Yes, Cortex is still free. And one of my favorite things about Cortex, not only is it free, but it has a web app as well as a desktop app, and that way you can also access the web app on your phone, and eventually the phone app will be releasing too. So I will be able to dump everything I need to either into Cortex or on my paper. But if I don't have the paper notebook, then I want to be able to dump it into Cortex in the capture feature. We'll talk more about that a little bit later. The best part about Cortex is that I can open up 2 different screens at the same time and look at my work, for example, my work projects and my home projects, and make sure that anything that needs to overlap can, or keep them completely separate if I need to as well. Now, part 3 is called research management. This is where you take all of your outside information and you bring it together into, as I said, I use Cortex. Now, within Cortex, the capture feature that I was just mentioning is a one-stop dump where you can just quickly brain dump, and you can attach it to different documents if you want to. We'll talk more on that later. But the capture and the documents features together for collecting your research management is where it's at. This is how you house all outside information. So anything that you can learn from books, anything that you've done research on online, the ideas that you had for a family trip to Disney World, you can start dumping all of your ideas and the things that you want to do into this document for the research management portion. I used to use Google Docs for this, and then I used Notion for a while, but Cortex does an incredible job of pulling information that you input into the library. So if you can put something that you store, an ebook, a PDF, you can even pull transcripts from like a YouTube video, for example. So let's say you found a YouTube video on all the best places that you need to go at Disney World. You can pull that transcript and pull the information out of it into your research management system and be able to then use that information to help inform what you're going to do in the project management system. So I love using Cortex because it has so much versatility and can connect and talk to the different areas that you are using together. And needless to say, because of the capture feature, if I'm out on a walk and an idea comes up, I'm able to drop that information, and it kind of is a one-stop shop for pulling that information and adding it to the appropriate either research area or project area that I need to. I really can't speak highly enough about Cortex. Before I tell you the 4th part, be sure that you stick around until the end, because without this maintenance habits that I'm going to talk about at the end, you can set this all up and still end up being back in the same place that you were already in. The definition of insanity, doing the same things over and over again and expecting different results. So make sure that you stay all the way to the end so you can change just these 2 things and never miss an appointment again. Now type "I'm still here" in the comments below if you're sticking around for the action steps that I'm talking about, because knowledge isn't enough. Action is where you have to take yourself to get to that next level that you've been dreaming of. The 4th part takes place offline. That is where we enter the bullet journal. This is called your execution management system. And the execution management system allows you to take each of these different pieces and put it into a written form so that you're not having to access your digital systems all throughout the day. Instead, you write it all down. How I do it is I have my schedule on one side, I have my primary to-dos on the other side, and then I also incorporate some other aspects of it that help me make sure that I'm doing my habits and keeping track, because the healthier and more well cared for I am, the better able I am to utilize my systems. As promised, you only need to add 2 new habits to maintain this new setup. First, the planning and processing. That is what you're going to do in the morning and in the evening so that you can add this information to your paper, and then at the end of the day, take it from the paper and process it back into the system, the appropriate system. So for example, if it needs to go from your notebook into your schedule, you need to make sure that you add those dates to the schedule that you've written in the notes. If it needs to go from your written paper into your project management so you can like start the next process, then you'll add it to that, and so on and so forth. Any notes that you take that need to be considered part of the research, you add it to the research tool so that you can access it later, and you don't have to reference going back to the paper and back and forth. You put it in there so it's processed so that you can pull it out the next day for planning and how you are going to add it to your to-do list and actually use it on that day, keeping focused instead of getting distracted by all of the other things. Tell me in the comments, do you use a monthly day to budget all of your money? Bear with me, I know you're probably like, what is she talking about? bear with. It makes sense for the second of the habit. The second habit is called monthly review. And that is, I do it on the last Friday of the month and I schedule it on my calendar as part of my scheduling management. So it's a time specific task that I'm going to get done. And I sit down and I pull everything out of all of my systems for the month and go of anything that's no longer relevant, update projects that need to be updated, remove things that have been completed or no longer are things that need to happen and take place. In Cortex, it's so easy because I'm able to start a new document that's connected to the projects I've already done, or completely just save that April, for example, my April element, and add the next month May element so that everything is like in clickable reach and I can see multiple screens or documents open at the same time if I need to reference back to something from the month before. If you want to learn more about how I do this in Cortex, be sure to subscribe. I use capture feature, as I mentioned before, because if I'm out for like a walk or I have a random thought, I can just grab my phone and quick add it to the capture portion of Cortex, which I thought was so cool. I don't always have to have my notebook with me because, as you see, mine is pretty big. I go big. And so I can add that there. So I have incorporated using the capture feature and the notes section of my bullet journal to pull into making sure I process my day. And I add them to the research and project management systems when I am processing at the end of the day. I'm going to share about it here in this video that I'm going to connect below.